Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past week there was quite a bit of information about upcoming iPads, iPhones, as well as maybe a new iPhone SE and when to expect that, as well as a few other announcements. And so this is your news update for the week of June 27th, 2021. And the first thing has to do with a new support document that Apple released. The other day, last Friday, they released a new support document talking about magnetic interference with medical devices. Now we know that the iPhone 12 Pro Max with its magnets in the back, if you were to bring it closer to, say, a pacemaker, for example, could be problematic. However, people that generally have these devices in them, I've talked to some that say they just normally use it on the opposite side that they have the pacemaker, and it's not a big problem. However, if you go down, you'll see there's a bunch of different products listed now. So AirPods and charging cases, Apple Watch and accessories, HomePod, iPad and accessories, iPhone and MagSafe accessories, Macs and Beats. And so I'll link this in the description below, but this is basically anything that has magnets in it, from speakers that are in the iPhone to the magnetic ring that allows for MagSafe wireless charging. So that's just something that they've updated with all of those different devices and all of the extra information. Now also, Apple released some firmware for AirTags. And if you have AirTags, there's new firmware available, although you kind of just have to wait for it to update. Now, Apple did release some firmware updates before. It's 1.0.276, but this time around there's a new build number. None of mine have updated that I'm aware of. So if you go into your Find My app, and within the Find My app, actually tap the name at the top, and then you can see the new firmware update. And it looks like mine did update, but when they did and how they did, I'm not really sure. I tried to sort of do the same way you would update AirPods, for example, and it didn't work. So this is something that is a little bit challenging to get to update. You just wait for it to happen, but they did update them. So it has the same exact version number, but a different build number. So it's the same thing. You can't really see the build. What it's for specifically, Apple hasn't said. So maybe it's for added security over the last one. We're not sure at this specific point anyway. Now, along with that, Apple also released today macOS Monterey Beta 2. This was the last developer beta that wasn't updated to Beta 2 last week, and now we have Beta 2 of macOS Monterey. I'm still looking into it. It just installed on my M1 MacBook Pro, so if there's a bunch of significant changes, I'll be sure to do a video about that. Also last week, Apple opened a new Apple store in Los Angeles, and you can see here Apple Tower Theater now open in downtown Los Angeles. And they took an old theater, made it into a store, and it's probably one of the most beautiful stores I've seen, although I haven't seen it in person, but it's very nice, and they've kept much of the style that it used to have. So it's nice to see them turn this into something nice instead of just no one using the theater altogether. So that's something that they've done this past week, as well as launching a new creative studio to provide opportunities to young creatives. So you can see it says launching in Los Angeles, Beijing, and there's other places as well. So it's launching in Bangkok, London, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., and they'll work with nonprofit community organizations to connect with youth and then teach them different skills. So you can read all about this. Again, I'll link this in the description below, but it's nice to see them reaching out and helping people learn even more than what might be available through their schools, for example. Now, when it comes to the next version of the iPhone, whether that be a 2021 iPhone, iPhone 12s or 13, whatever Apple decides to call it, and this is just a prototype that was meant to look like a 12 Pro Max, but it never turned out to be like this. But according to Digitimes, iPhone 13 production is starting soon as Apple is getting all of its parts from the different distributors to the manufacturing plant. And so it looks like it's ramping up production. And also to go along with that, Foxconn, who assembles the iPhones, is apparently offering record bonuses to recruit workers to assemble the next iPhone. So it looks like they're working on that. And this is about the right time frame, usually a few months out, where they get ready, start manufacturing millions of phones for maybe a September release like we normally see. Now, according to Ming Chi Kuo, this year's iPhone Pro models are said to have a new ultra-wide camera that has autofocus. Now, traditionally, we'll have ultra-wide in our 12 Pro Max, for example, but it doesn't have autofocus. It's a fixed focus. And in the Pro models this year, apparently it's going to gain autofocus. So we've heard about sensor shift stabilization, which we have on the 12 Pro Max, coming to other phones, but now ultra-wide is said to have autofocus in it as well. So we could see that along with that feature coming to all iPhone models in in the following year of 2022 with an iPhone 14, for example. Now, we've heard this before, but again, according to Kuo, he's saying that 2022 iPhones may feature an under-display fingerprint sensor. So that won't be something we see this year, according to him. Instead, it would be in the following year. I would love to see it this year or sooner rather than later with the option to use that instead of Face ID, but it seems like you may have to wait another year for that if you were looking forward to it. So there's not any specific information as to why or what's going to be different, but maybe they'll redesign some things with the display, get rid of the notch maybe at some point, and give you an under-display fingerprint sensor when they can. Now, again, Kuo is saying that the iPhone 12 mini will end production with this year's iPhone. So we would have a mini this year, and then next year they would no longer manufacture it, and instead switch to two different models, a 6.1-inch and a 6.7-inch phone with maybe a regular and Pro variant instead of a mini as well. So I know a lot of people will be a little upset about that, but apparently they're just not selling it well enough to justify it. So it seems like it may be something they discontinue. We'll have to wait and see. You never know. Apple can change anything at the last minute, but that seems to be what people are saying at this point based off the manufacturing. Now, when it comes to the next generation iPhone SE, a lot of people are looking forward to this. And again, according to Kuo Ming Chi, he's saying that for 2022, Apple is said to be working on this in the first half. We should see it early next year, for example. And it would have 5G, and it's said to be the least expensive 5G iPhone ever. Now, that means basically under $700, since that's the current cheapest iPhone 12 with 5G. So you would have an iPhone SE with that. Now, as far as any other changes, whether that means removing the home button or maybe putting it under the display or putting it on the side button, he hasn't said anything about that, but maybe we'll see some of those features. I would love to see it go full screen, but with the side button being Touch ID like the iPad Air, for example. But again, there's no specific information about that. Now, as far as iOS 14.7, a lot of people have been asking me, when are we going to see the next beta or a final release? Well, to be honest, I thought we'd have a beta already. I thought we'd have it as soon as last week, but it seems like we could have it as soon as later today, maybe tomorrow, or we could have maybe a final next week. Apple has really changed up how they're releasing betas. I would expect a beta 4 just based off the build number, but it's been long enough we could see a release candidate or even a public release at this point. So Apple has not specified to anyone that I'm aware of when iOS 14.7 will be out. And then, of course, we'd move on to iOS 14.8, for example, until late September when we expect to see iOS 15 released to the public. Again, another question a lot of people are asking me is when to expect iOS 15 public beta. And Apple has said July. They haven't said anything more than that, and that could mean as soon as Thursday. So this Thursday, July 1st, if beta 2 is stable enough, we could see that release as a public beta. That's typically what they do. Or we could wait until the following week where there's maybe beta 3 and they make that public beta 1. We just don't know yet. It's possible we could have it as soon as this week based off last week's late release. But again, they haven't said specifically, so we'll have to wait and see what they do. Hopefully they release it this week as beta 2, and then we'll move on concurrently with the regular developer betas and public betas after that. But again, we won't have a public release until late September generally, around the launch of the iPhones. So that's typically what Apple does every single year. Now, according to Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, apparently Apple is considering a larger iPad. Now, this is a 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro, and if they're considering a larger one, I actually would welcome that, a 16-inch iPad Pro or even a larger one where you could put it on a stand that pivots, making it much like an iMac, but that runs iPadOS. I would love to see what they have in mind for this, but I wouldn't really mind a larger iPad as long as I have a nice case for it and maybe Final Cut Pro finally, or Logic Pro, or any of those pro apps that are really missing. I know there's LumaFusion, but if they made it more like Final Cut Pro or some touch variant of that, I would definitely welcome that. And we could see that maybe in 2022, but it's just an idea at this point, according to internal testing. And also they're testing new iPads with glass backs that would support wireless charging. Now, whether or not they ever do this is hard to say, but apparently they're going to redesign the iPad again with a new design, which we would expect every few years. So maybe they could go to a design more like the iPhone, where it's a metal ring on the outside with glass front and back to support it. It would be stronger with stainless steel, but it would be very heavy, I think, with glass on the back. So not only is it a concern for breaking it, but it's also a concern because of its weight. So The wireless charging would be nice, but it would be a little bit unbelievable to see something that heavy. So I'm curious as to what it would be like, but I would definitely welcome a larger one that's similar to a 16-inch MacBook, for example. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Now, when it comes to Apple Watch, apparently Apple has received approval in China for ECG to be activated. It's already active in watchOS 8 Beta 2, and so that will be active very soon on public releases. Also, the upcoming Series 7 Apple Watch is said to be getting its first major redesign. I've talked about that before, where they would take the edges of these and square them off a little bit more to match the current iPhones. But it's also said to have maybe a processor that's a lot smaller, a new S7 system on a chip that would be smaller, maybe double-sided, and more power efficient. So according to Kuo Ming Chi, saying that the chip could be double-sided to shrink its size, but also Apple could be focusing on battery life with the Series 7, because some of the sensors we've been looking forward to, such as blood glucose monitoring, may be a year or two away. So apparently, according to Bloomberg, they're still working on blood glucose monitoring and other features, but it's something that's a little bit difficult to implement and would be revolutionary. So to get the sensor right for that makes sense that it would take some time. No one's been able to do it successfully. And if Apple can do that with a watch, it would be huge for a lot of people. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's coming this year, but possibly in the following year, it seems like. But either way, we'll have to wait and see. But they are going to redesign it. I know a lot of people want a round Apple Watch, and that doesn't seem like something they're going to do. So we may have a more squared off Apple Watch, though, in the future very shortly. When it comes to AirPods, apparently Apple is ramping up production of new models. There's shipments of components going to manufacturers right now, according to Digitimes, and if that's true, we could see one ready later this year, maybe around the fall when they release the new iPhone. So we could see either AirPods 3 or AirPods Pro 2. I tend to think it'd be more of an AirPods 2 or AirPods 3 situation rather than an AirPods Pro 2, but again, we'll have to wait and see. We've seen already some designs of what it could look like, but right now we'll just have to wait and see, as it looks like there's a lot of movement as far as manufacturing goes, but specifics are kind of hard to come by. Apple has become more and more secretive, as they have been in the past, and it seems to be harder for manufacturers to get that information out. So that's it for all the news this past week. I'm looking forward to a larger iPad, if that's really a thing they're working on, and of course updated iPhones and that upcoming iPhone 15 public beta that I know so many people are waiting for. So I can't wait to see that and see what people think of iOS 15. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course I'll link it in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.